Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. Anyway, today I'm coming to you with my March wrap-up. So we're going to be chatting about all the books that I read in the month of March, which was actually a pretty successful reading month in terms of quantity, and you know, the quality wasn't too bad either, although it wasn't the best ever. But yeah, it was a pretty good reading month in general. The month itself was absolutely crazy. If you didn't know, I work every other weekend on a Saturday, and so like those were chaotic. But then the 2 weekends that I had free were actually not free at all, because I had my bachelorette party on one weekend, and then the following weekend it was my best friend's bachelorette party. So during my actual free time, it was not free because I was very busy socializing, and I have zero complaints. Like, I'm not complaining whatsoever. It was a wonderful time, and I'm so grateful to my wonderful bridesmaids, because I'm having two bachelorette parties because I'm extra. And the first one was just like my bridesmaids, my mom and my mother-in-law, and it was like pretty chill and just like really wholesome. And then the next one is going to be very out there. I'm basically having a Shrek themed bachelorette party because of course I am. Why wouldn't I have a Shrek themed bachelorette party? Anyway, so yeah, I'm very grateful for them for coming out and celebrating me, and it was a great time. But yeah, it's been a very busy month. And if you haven't been watching my vlogs, you might not know that I also started doing a course this month because it's something that's going to help me get a different job in the future, and that's just eaten up a lot of my free time. So yeah, that's why there haven't been a ton of videos this month. Yeah, there's a lot of rambling just to say that I've been very busy and I've been very stressed, but it's fine. Everything's fine. So let's just chat about the 7 books that I read in the month of March instead of talking about how everything is stressful. Cool. So as usual, we're going to start off with my monthly stats, which I get from Storygraph. I didn't actually do them for last month because I didn't read that many books, but I will be doing them again this month because I read some more, so it's kind of interesting to see. Anyway, so yeah, let's just get into the stats. So in the month of March, as I said, I read 7 books, which is actually the same amount of books that I read in January and February combined. It was pretty successful in terms of the quantity. I read a total of 2,257 pages. I listened to 13.93 hours of audiobooks. In terms of my mood, most of my books were emotional. Then I had some funny books, reflective, mysterious, informative, adventurous, basically the whole spectrum of human emotion. As usual, I like to read a lot of different stuff. In terms of the pace, 6 of the books that I read were medium paced and just 1 of them was fast paced. In terms of my page number, 4 of the books that I read were between 300 and 499 pages, and 1 book that I read was over 500 pages, which is fantastic because I'm trying to read more tomes this year, and I think this is the first one I've read. It might be the second one I've read, but I have not read very many. Both the audiobooks I listened to were less than 8 hours long. And then my fiction non-fiction split was 5 fiction books and 2 non-fiction books. Pretty proud of myself. In terms of genres, as you can see, I read a lot of romance books. So we've got 4 romance, 2 fantasy, 2 contemporary, and then all the other ones were just 1. And then in terms of the format, I read 1 book digitally, which was an ARC. I listened to 2 audiobooks, as I said, and I read 4 books physically. And then probably the most exciting bit, my average rating for the month was 3.46. So I had 1 book which I didn't rate because it was kind of a self-help book, so I didn't really feel like rating that one. I had 1 book that I gave 2.75 stars, 2 books that I gave 3 stars, 1 book that I gave 3.25, 1 book that I gave 4.25, and I had 1 4.5 star read. So actually, January and February were better in a way because I had a 5-star read in both of those months. So yeah, kind of a shame, but 4.5 is still pretty great. Anyway, so those were all of my statistics, and now let's quickly go over every book that I read and what I rated it, and then we'll go into the highlights, things that I really want to chat about. So the first book that I finished in the month of March was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and I gave this 3 stars. Then I read The Phoenix Crown by Janie Chang and Kate Quinn, and I gave this 4.25 stars. Then I read Why We Swim by Bonnie Swee, and I gave this 2.75 stars. Then I read In the Weeds by B.K. Borison, and I gave this 3 stars. Next, I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and I gave this 3.25 stars. I read Sensitive, The Hidden Power of the Highly Sensitive Person in a Loud, Fast, Too Much World by Jen Graneman and Andre Solo, and I didn't rate this one because it's kind of self-help. And finally, I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and I gave that 4.5 stars. Now, let's chat about these books. I'll briefly mention the book that I didn't rate, which was Sensitive, The Power of a Thoughtful Mind, blah, 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 blah. As I said, this was kind of a self-help book about being a sensitive person and how to kind of capitalize on it in a way. Not even capitalize it, but just kind of make it more of an accepted thing. Because I feel like, in general, like, I'm definitely a sensitive person. I know I am. I cry a lot, feel very deeply. And also something interesting that they highlighted in the book was that sensitive people might feel more affected by like violence in TV shows and movies and things like that. And that's really interesting because I literally will not watch a TV show if I know it's like super violent. It's really interesting and something I hadn't really connected the dots about. But yeah, I definitely consider myself to be a sensitive person, so that's why I was really interested in this book. I do think it's a really good read if you are a sensitive person. It was really interesting to kind of feel validated in the fact that I've always been called like too sensitive and everything like that. It's like, well, you know, I am sensitive, but it actually does me lots of favors that maybe you don't experience because you're not as sensitive. It was an interesting read. I would recommend it if you are sensitive or have a sensitive person in your life, but I decided not to rate it because it is kind of like self-help. So yeah, I wasn't really sure how to rate it, so I just didn't. So the next one I'm going to talk about, I'll only talk about this briefly actually because I did mention this in a reading vlog and I went into quite a bit of detail, and that book is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. If you somehow don't know what this book's about, this is Ali Hazelwood's newest book and she's dipping her toes into the water of fantasy romance, kind of. It's a paranormal romance between a vampire and a werewolf. Basically our main girly, Misery, because of course her name is Misery, she is a vampire, and basically growing up she was like the collateral for the vampire clan, because essentially there's like the vampires, humans, and werewolves all sort of coexist. For the vampires and humans to get along, they have this agreement that the humans will host a vampire child and the vampires will host a human child. Basically, like if anything happens to them, then like the peace will be ruined between them. Anyway, so Misery was the vampire collateral, and then she's finally fully grown and basically is then sent off to be vampire collateral again, but with the werewolves this time, because she is forced into a marriage with the head of the werewolf pack, Lo. There's like some mystery, it's paranormal romance, there's knotting, which I never want to hear about ever again or think about. It actually haunts me a little bit. I was not really a fan of this. I didn't love it, but if you want to hear more of my thoughts, check out my vlog where I read this book because I go into quite a bit of detail there. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Powerless by Lauren Roberts, which was really popular on TikTok a while ago, and so I'm sure you already know what it's about. You might have already read it, but if you don't know, it's kind of been described as Red Queen meets the Hunger Games, because it's set in this world where basically there was this plague at one point. It left people with powers, and then people without powers are considered to be very dangerous to society because they have basically been taught that powerless people will cause people with powers to be sick. To be honest, I don't really understand what the big deal was with the powerless people versus the powerful people, but whatever. And so every so often there are these trials, and I can't even remember what the point of the trials is. Just like glory, I guess. And they're basically really dangerous and a lot of people die, but it's not like a fight to the death like the Hunger Games is. It's just there is often a lot of death. Anyway, so we follow our main character. I don't know what her name is. What the fuck is her name? Her name's Peyton. We follow our main character Peyton, who is powerless. And basically at the start of the book, she has been living on the streets, but her path crosses with this guy and she ends up stealing from him, but then later on in the day, he is getting attacked by someone and she steps in and saves him. Anyway, it turns out that that guy is none other than Kai, who is one of the king's sons, but he's not the one who's next in line for the throne. He is going to be the royal enforcer and basically like kind of like captain of the guard type of situation, as well as like the torturer and things like that. That's his role. So he and Pei, their paths cross and there's a little bit of a spark. He's just like, wow, she's such a vicious little thing and I kind of like her. It's a young adult fantasy romance and basically both of them are taking part in the trials and things happen from there. I really enjoyed this book in the beginning. I was really into it. I was like flying through it, and then I don't know what happened, but in the second half I just really lost steam. It felt quite repetitive to me at times because basically before each trial, which there were 3 trials, and before each one there would be a ball, and I just feel like that wasn't necessary. Like things did happen at the balls which were important, but I think one of them definitely could have been cut. It was like a little bit too repetitive, and also like the parallels between the Hunger Games and this, it was like so obvious. That's not really a complaint because I actually love trials. I am a hoe for trials, I would say. So I don't really have an issue if things remind me of the Hunger Games because I love the Hunger Games. I did enjoy it. There were things that I really liked, but there were other things that really irked me a bit later on in the book, like the repetition of certain phrases. Like Kai kept on calling Peyton like, oh, you vicious little thing, and darling. Those 2 things were repeated so many times that by the end of it I was like, can you shut the fuck up? I feel like I'm shitting on it right now, but I'm not. Like Like, I enjoyed myself. I had a good time reading it. I just think that towards the end, I kind of just fell out of love with it. In the beginning, I was loving it. But yeah, at the end, I was like, okay, I'm tired of this. I want this to be over. I don't know. Maybe it's my attention span. I don't know, but I was over it at the end. But I might read the sequel. I'm not sure. But yeah, I gave this one 3.25. Anyway, the penultimate book I'm going to talk about is The Phoenix Crown by Kate Quinn and Janie Chang. I think this is my third book by Kate Quinn. I really loved her book, The Rose Code. I adored that book. And then I read The Alice Network. Didn't love that, but I still like her writing style. And I like the sort of format. She writes these historical thrillers, kind of, which are very much focused on women and women's issues, specifically in that time period. Not in like a preachy way. It's in a way that's nuanced enough that you understand what she's getting at, but without it being like in your face, if that makes sense. Anyway, and I hadn't read anything by Janie Chang before, but I really enjoyed this book. This book takes place in San Francisco in 1906, I think, which is when there was this really big earthquake in San Francisco. I feel like I could easily spoil this, so I'm going to read you the little description from Goodreads. I apologize, but here we go. San Francisco, 1906. In a city bustling with newly minted millionaires and scheming upstarts, two very different women hope to change their fortunes. Gemma, a golden-haired, silver-voiced soprano whose career desperately needs rekindling, and Suling, a petite and resolute Chinatown embroideress who is determined to escape an arranged marriage. Their paths cross when they are drawn into the orbit of Henry Thornton, a charming railroad magnate whose extraordinary collection of Chinese antiques includes the fabled Phoenix Crown, a legendary relic of Beijing's fallen summer palace. His patronage offers Gemma and Suling the chance of a lifetime, but their lives are thrown into turmoil when a devastating earthquake rips San Francisco apart and Thornton disappears, leaving behind a mystery reaching further than anyone could have imagined, until the Phoenix Crown reappears 5 years later at a sumptuous Paris costume ball, drawing Gemma and Suling together in one last desperate quest for justice. That's all I knew going in, and I really enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. The reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars was because it did take me a little while to get into it. I'd say probably the first 100 pages I was a bit like not really sold on it, and then I finally got stuck in and I just didn't want to stop reading. I really enjoyed this one, and I would highly recommend if that sounds interesting to you. Anyway, and now on to the final book that I read, and also my favorite book of the month, which was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is her newest book, which is coming out tomorrow, actually, April 2nd. Well, tomorrow for me. I'm not sure when I'm going to post this video, but it's tomorrow for me. And this book basically follows our main character, Justin. And Justin thinks that he has a curse on him. Basically, he kind of finds that every time he dates someone, it's never quite right. But as soon as they break up, the woman he was dating immediately finds her soulmate or her husband, you know, whatever, and is literally married like within a year. So he posts about this on Reddit and it goes viral. And this woman called Emma finds this post and she decides to slide into his DMs because she's having the exact same issue. And so they basically make a deal to date just for the summer, and then they'll break up and hopefully their curses will cancel each other out and they'll both find the one. And Emma is basically a traveling nurse, and so she can decide where to go. So she decides to go to Minnesota and stay in a house on a lake with her best friend, and then she can date Justin. It's supposed to be a quick fling just for the summer, but when Emma's toxic mother shows up and Justin has to assume guardianship of his 3 siblings, they're suddenly navigating a lot more than they expected, including catching real feelings for each other. What if this time fate has actually brought the perfect pair together? I really enjoyed this book. I feel like Abby Jimenez has such an addictive writing style. Like, I really did not want to put this down. Like, every time I had to stop reading, I was just very disappointed. And I was literally reading this on my lunch break at work, and I just didn't want to stop. I was like, what do you mean my lunch break is over already and I have to go back to work? I had such a good time with this one. I feel like Abby Jimenez always has a really good balance of like light-hearted moments that kind of draw you in and get you into the romance, and then after that she'll hit you with the trauma bonding, and it gets a lot deeper than what you thought was going to be a light-hearted fluffy romance. She really loves to cover like a wide variety of heavy topics, which I enjoy from time to time. I think I couldn't read Abby Jimenez back to back, but I do enjoy her books when I read them every so often. But my issue with this one was the climax of the book. It was just chaotic. Like, it was so much. It was kind of over the top, like melodramatic, which is the reason I knocked it down half a star. But like the rest of the book, absolutely loved. 5 star. It was just like a little bit of it, which like was just over the top. It was so much. But yeah, if you like Abby Jimenez's writing style, if you've read some other of her books, then you know what you're getting into and you're gonna have a good time, I think. I think that she's not for everyone, but I do really enjoy her books. I just need to have like a break between them. And I did have like a year break between the Happy Ever After list and this one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And as I said, it was super addictive, very quick read. I had a great time and I would highly recommend it. Anyway, but those are all the books that I read in the month of March. Please let me know what books you read down below and which one your favorite was. I would love to know. But that is all that I have for this video, so I hope you liked it. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and if you made it all the way to the end, please leave me the sun or the beach emoji for Just for the Summer. Yeah, that's all that I have, so I'll see you very soon with another one. Bye!
in the backyard of your old farm in the summer. Stayed there for 3 weeks where we learned to love each other. Wrote you a letter, sent a message to the that day. Skip to the present.